So hello from Green-Mopeds in London. So today we are taking out the Yadea C1S, okay, which is imported by Lexmoto. It's one of the 4 electric bikes that they are doing at the moment. What we're going to do is we're going to see how far the battery goes, because we left with 0 miles and 100%, and it has a quoted range of 50, but I presume that meant 50 in mode 1, which is, let me see, 17 miles an hour, 16 miles an hour. So we'll see, hopefully, how far we're going to get. I've got a bit of a journey to do, so we'll work through it and see what happens. So Yadea are, as I've said now a few times, one of the largest electric bike providers in the world as it goes, based out of China, and they're talking about 6 million units, 70 countries, you know, a big company. They have a lot of different sort of products, including, you know, push bikes, kick scooters, 3-wheelers. I think they even do 4-wheeler, little sort of mobility scooter type things. So yeah, it's not 6 million electric mopeds or motorcycles that they're doing. Anyway, this one is an interesting bike. Well, mostly because of its design, actually. There's nothing particularly different about it from a spec perspective, but it is, if you look at it, and we'll put it next to some other bikes on our static review, it looks big, it looks wide, and it's got quite a, well, as you can see down there, the body of it is quite wide, so they've sort of built in the at the front the sort of protection that you would like from a wind and today a rain perspective. But yeah, its design is, I guess, is bit Marmite, love it or hate it. It's interesting, I guess, from a brand perspective. What NIU do is they have their halo light, you know, the round light on the front of their bike, which is on every bike they do, even down to the UQI Pros, where they've put it on a sort of, not actually in the body, but on a separate light cluster. Yadea haven't done that, and you would probably wonder why. Lots of manufacturers will standardise on a nose, if you like, and you know, you'd always recognise their car because the nose is always the same. This one, they haven't done that. They've sort of gone for the same symbol front and back. So they've got a rear running light, which is in the Yadea symbol, but their front light is also in the Yadea symbol, which is fine. And it would be fine if all the other bikes were like that, but they're not. So maybe this is one of their newer models, so maybe that's what's going to happen. They're going to standardise on a sort of nose like NIU have done, but sort of by the by, really. But it is quite a unique design. If you want sort of a lot of protection at the front without having to necessarily you know, be worried about the wind or rain getting at you, then this might be a bike for you. Also notice that this windscreen is fairly big, as built-in windscreens go, and again you'll see that on the static review. While we're stationary, we can have a quick look round. So we've got 2 hydraulic brakes, because that's the fluid, and you can just peep through there and see what the level is, which is actually quite a good idea. Some of them, they build this into the actual body of the bike, and you can't tell what the level is, other than, you know, I guess you have to assume that you need to replace it or take the bike apart to check. So that's quite a clever little thought they've done there. You know, it's pretty simple. This is a single 60 volt 32 amp hour battery, so under the floor, and again, Yadea are good for thinking of storage. lots of the other manufacturers are either not thinking of that, or even if they do think of that, they still don't leave you with enough usable space for a helmet. Okay, so in actual fact, because I'm going on a bit of a long journey and I want to see how far this battery gets, I've actually put a spare battery under the seat because it's big enough to take the spare battery, and I've put some other stuff as well, waterproofs and all that. So like the G5, they have got enough space for a helmet under their seat, so good on them. It's also quite handy because at the current time there isn't a rack available for this bike, so we are just starting to get some racks for the G5 for a top box, but currently I don't know whether that's by choice or design, there is no rack for this bike, so your rucksacks or using the space under the seat. Okay. As you can see also, the floor pan is quite wide. This is a two-seater. It has got a ridge in the seats, which is one of the topics I often bring up. So there is enough space for two people. Obviously without a rack and top box, that second person has got nothing to lean against, but at least there's space on the floor for that person to rest their feet, although there is pegs as well, so that's also good. Okay. It's an L1E bike, so 50cc moped category. So a 50cc license or a pre-2001 driver's license or CVT for everybody else. Okay, it's got a 2.2 kilowatt motor. So I guess if you're to compare this amongst other bikes, you are looking at an EK1, similar in sort of dimensions, but more powerful, 2.8 kilowatts. An NIU NQI Sport, similar range quoted, less powerful, so 1.8 kilowatts. And as we said, 3 horsepower would be just over 2 kilowatts. So this is a 3 horsepower maximum bike. Okay, so again we stress that you shouldn't compare horsepower on petrol to horsepower on electric, because I'm actually making use of probably 80 or 90% of that 3 horsepower, when on petrol you're wasting about 70% of that horsepower. So don't compare horsepower across petrol and electric. Okay, so again, as we're stationary, a bit more about the dash. So very simple, no range, as you can probably see, which is one of the reasons we're taking it out. So you very simple, just got your battery level, 2 modes, eco and sport, trip, and odometer. Okay, you can swap to kilometers through holding the mode button around the dash. They've got this quite light horn, and that's your P button to engage the throttle. Then you've got your lights and hazards and stuff like that. Okay, so very simple. They've also gone down here, as you can see, for one of these tiny little keys, like the Horwin, in fact, EK series. And then it integrates into a sort of nice little key fob, as you'll see on the static review. One thing they might have missed a trick about is that they've put their USB port for your phone inside the cubbyhole. Okay, so if you want to do this sort of setup where you have a phone on your bike and you want to power it from the USB port, you're going to have to think of a way to do that. Maybe either one of those flat USB cables or make a hole, which isn't ideal, I suppose. And then you've got your bag hook. Okay, so very simple. The way you get to the battery, which is under the floor, is to basically turn the key anti-clockwise, put the bike into its steering lock, and then keep turning. And then eventually the compartment will pop open. Interestingly, as this is the single battery C1S, they have left the space under the floor for the second battery, but no cabling, I think. I mean, I didn't try to put the battery all the way back, but it looks like this could be a 2-battery bike, and it could possibly be a way of taking a second battery with you, okay, rather than using up the space under the seat. So there is, you could say, storage under the seat, under the floor, but that is sort of coincidental. I don't think it's been designed that way. Okay, so 50 mile range, 60 volt, 32 amp hour battery. It comes with a charger, the Yadea charger, which is standard. It's the same charger for everybody. 4 to 6 hour charging time if you were to run it flat. As I've said on many of these bikes are not going to set records. The ones down this sort of end of the spectrum, the sort of sub 3 kilowatt, even maybe sub 4 kilowatt bikes, are not going to, accelerate 0 to 30 in 2 seconds or whatever, despite them being a hub motor bike where it's direct drive. They will get you to the speed that they get you to in the time that they take. Okay, so don't expect records. That's not what they're meant for. They are meant to, poodle around in inner cities, commuting. You could argue delivery, return to base delivery for sure. Obviously they'd have to fix the rack issue on this particular bike, but this sort of class of bike is not meant to be going out and setting records or beating 125cc petrol bikes off the line. That is not what they're there for. Okay, so the bike comes in 2 colours. This grey, as you can see here, sort of a metallic matte grey, and then a black. But the thing to say about this bike, if you are comparing it, bearing in mind what I've just said, it is a little bit more powerful than an NIU, should do similar sort of range, NQI Sport I'm talking about. Not as powerful as an EK1, but more usable space than both. It is 2,100 and it is on the grant, so that price is after the grant. Okay, so NIU NQI Sport 2,400, EK1 2,400. So again, you're looking at, is the difference in price worth the money? You could argue, quality and all that sort of stuff. Maybe these buttons seem a little bit cheap. I guess I would agree with that. But the riding is fine. The seating is fine. It's doing what it says on the tin. So the question is it for £400, £500 cheaper? Is it a good buy? And if you just want something to get to the station to go to work, or if you're just commuting short distances, do you want to pay the extra money? It has got an alarm. It talks about an app, but I don't think that's available in the UK. It talks about Bluetooth, and I did pair it as far as I could tell, and that wasn't something that worked. On the other Yadeas that I've seen, I think these are apps for Chinese market, so I'm not too surprised it doesn't work. So again, if you wanted to add a GPS unit to this bike, you could buy one and add it, and you'd get an app with tracking. Okay, there are customers who have already done that. So again, that might mean that, okay, it certainly wouldn't cost you £500 to add an app to this bike with GPS. Okay, you couldn't check it, but you could certainly add the GPS part, which is the bit that insurers and people like that are concerned about. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to ride around basically for the rest of the day and see exactly what their claimed 50 mile range is. Okay, so I'm not going to be riding any differently to any other day. I'm going to be doing, you know, the same traffic and all that. I'm going to be going fast when I can go fast, etc., etc. And it will be interesting to see exactly how far my claimed 50 miles is going to get me. So we'll be back nearer the time when we are going to run out of juice. As I said, I do have a spare battery, so it doesn't matter. And then we'll come back to you. All right, back then. So just to come back temporarily, to say that we've got to 19 miles at 50%. So we are looking at, if we extrapolate, which we tell everybody not to do, but if we did, we're looking at 40, which is probably more likely to be nearer the truth anyway. If they quote 50, they're more likely to be 40. So some other things that I've noticed while riding around, indicators do make noise, which is good, and you cancel them by pressing the same button again at the same side. So some indicators you have to muck about centering them, and sometimes you go from left to right rather than just cancel. So this one, if I was to go left, I'd press left. If I want to cancel left, I'd press left again. Okay, so that's that. Another thing just to be aware of the things that we've said that it doesn't have. So for example, it doesn't have an app. Well, an app for the UK market at least. It also doesn't have regen, which, as we said before, would adding a mile or two to your range make all the difference? Possibly. Obviously, if you need that mile, then it obviously does. But it's not necessarily a reason not to buy a bike. So yeah, this doesn't have regen. But as I said, we'll come back when we are pretty much flat and just see what's what in terms of range. All right. Okay, so we're down to 0%, 34 miles. This thing must conk out any time now, you would think. Probably not the best lane to be in if that does happen. But just to recap, 2099, so 2100. Interestingly, this bike doesn't seem to have lost any speed, any real speed anyway. You know, as some bikes drop down to like crawl home mode of 10 miles an hour or what have you, this bike seems to be giving me the same amount of speed, or albeit not 28, but 25, as from what I can tell. And 34 miles, so that's not too far off, I guess. We would have said 40, because we would have just knocked off 20% from the stated 50 miles. You never get the stated mileage anyway, so if we're saying 40 and this might crawl up to 35. So just to recap, it comes in grey or black. It's 209999, so 2100 plus the normal OTR bits. It is on the grant, so you get a 3-year warranty on the battery, you get a 2-year warranty on the bike. It's got a 60 volt 32 amp hour battery, 2.2 kilowatts, so just over 3 horsepower max, and we've explained why you don't compare horsepower on electric to petrol. It's got storage, it's got indicator noise. It doesn't have an app yet in English. It's fairly distinctive. It's very easy to ride. I mean, some of these bikes you get twitchy throttles because it's direct drive. This one is very easy, very smooth, progressive. We had someone yesterday come along and actually dismissed the bike because of the way the throttle was. But this one doesn't have any of that trouble. It's got a nice clear dash. It doesn't tell you range, but we've worked that out. It's 34 and a bit miles. Okay, some of the switch gear isn't it looks a bit cheap. It's got a USB port, but it is tucked away in a cubby hole. Got a bag hook, it's got an alarm. And as I said, that the body styling, which you'll see on the static review, is quite wide, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Also, it's big enough so that the knee handlebar thing that I often talk about isn't an issue. Well, it's not for me, and I'm 6'1", 1m81, I think it is, 1m85, something like that. So that's not a problem for me. So they've thought about that. It's running on 12-inch wheels, not 14-inch wheels, but the NQI Sport, for example, runs on 12-inch wheels as well. No rack, but you know, you could use a rucksack, and you've got the space under the seat. So for £374 less than an NIU NQI Sport, the only other real competitor would be a Horwin EK1, I guess. That can have 2 batteries and probably will do 100 miles with those 2 batteries, but you're talking about what is it, nearly £4,100 for an EK1 with 2 batteries. That's quite a lot of money for a 50cc moped, I would say. So the advantage of this is pretty much storage, price. Okay, nothing that, no brand behind the motor, as in a brand that you would know. No brand behind the battery, as in Panasonic, but it's still 60 volt, 32 amp hour, and if you've got that, that to me would be more important than necessarily who makes the battery. To me, you might think otherwise. I'm still surprised that this bike is going, to be fair. We've now got to 35 miles. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here. I'm not sure I want to carry on with this at this rate, so let's say 36 miles, which is fair enough for a 50-mile battery with real usage. You know, this is a 40-mile-an-hour road, so I've been going constantly flat out. I think that's fine for what it was stated, and you know, the fact that it keeps the speed to the very end is unusual, and it's actually a good thing. It would probably be better if, I guess, the 0% has been on for what, 2 miles now and you would think that it's gone beneath 0. It should have gone to 0. It's been 0 for too long. So let's say 36 miles is the real life usage of this bike. So I hope you found that useful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at hello@green-mopeds.com. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the static review of this bike when it comes out. And thanks very much.